And I wasn't happy with
No, you're
myself. And
recording.
then when I watched it, I was like, oh man, I was struggling for words, and I was, the words, you know, they were, I don't know how to explain it, I wasn't happy, but like my mom says,
Different for
yeah, my mom says too, though, you're your worst critic, and I'm like, yeah,
Well, I thought he did a good job.
I thought so too.
I just didn't feel comfortable, you know, like I did now.
You didn't seem as much yourself, you were a little more, you
Yeah,
know, but
yeah.
you still did a good job. You didn't fumble or anything.
No.
You did good.
Yeah, when your mind goes
Beauty,
and all those things that you
beautiful.
could have
Yeah.
said, could have, would have, should have.
Yeah.
Oh, be if I only, you know, then you look.
Hi,
That's why I say, go ahead and take it. Wow, even on an interview.
go, go that way.
Whoa, don't knock that camera over.
It'll scratch my back, I'll do it.
Every time you see Sharon, you
Just got treats in the pocket. That's what I
Smells
remember.
good, huh?
Yeah, with my car crashed,
Oh, yeah.
it's all, it's elsewhere.
What are you thinking, Larry?
What's that?
What were you thinking?
I let myself get triggered a few times, which is cool. It's not catastrophic anymore. I'm testing myself again lately, and it's not going well. So I've learned if I'm going to watch a combat flick, I better watch a happy-go-lucky, happy ending before I go to bed. Or I start making lists now. And then my subconscious works on things I need to accomplish on my list. But if I leave with the last thing of watching that, I got a real bad evening. So I just brought up some stuff, that's all.
What's a bad evening look like?
Night sweats, rocking and rolling, reliving it, full color, the smells, the sights, the sound, everything.
It really means the whole night, not just the evening.
Yeah, well, the minute I fall asleep, then when I wake up, it's ugly. But I am desensitized, I'm getting better. I can watch them in the early evening and not have too rough in the evening. I can watch them in the day and be okay. So my life's much better. Yeah, we're gonna do that in here, I guess. Let me see what brought me to ND. I was going to Doc Hughes Group at the time, and you want to do that now, or you want to do it somewhere else?
Let's go for it.
Recording
Is
is
that
good.
background
Yeah.
okay? Here's the white paper. And I'd watched Doc back in the day in TV, when he had a TV series. And I thought, wow, that guy thinks like I do. Interesting, not me thinking like him thinking like me. So
Okay.
that's a little egotism, I guess. Anyway, I thought, well, I'll go see him. And during the time I was married, I could never see him because the only time he only counseled during the day. And I couldn't convince my wife at the time to take off work, so. And then he showed up when I was going through a program called ADAPT, which is Aid in Divorce Recovery. And he came and talked. And then I was seeing Gentle Ben, I don't remember his last name. What was his name?
Jones.
Jones, right. And he ended up expiring, so I ended up over at Doc's and Huge Group. And we had a lot of similar philosophies, I guess. I like the way he worded stuff. And I won a raffle, whatever it's called, to ND, and I showed up at ND. But they've talked about it a lot, and I've been through 20 years of VA. Like Richard said, you know, I could subdue that, and I've numbed out. I'd spent a lot of years doing that. It affected my marriage, it affected my life. And I was pretty much going through life just numbed out. I had the anger. Why I wore that particular emotion I could go to rage in a heartbeat. My kids sadly were raised with, if you're gonna wake up dad from a sleep, you're gonna have to shake his toe because he's coming up big, bad, and angry. And I had a real bad hyper reflex. I had hypervigilance. I had a startle reflex that I would just, it was ugly. So later I got attached to Klonopin, which is, I guess, some opiate derivative. It eased the panic, anxiety, at least during the day when I'd have jets fly over, helos. The whop of a helo was really a strong trigger for me. I was a door gunner. And, just that sound would take me back to really ugly places. So my first ND, and what got me here was pain. I'll be honest, it was pain. You know, you can only subdue it for so long, and here it is, been 40 years now since I was in country. And, there's times when it still takes me back. So my admonishment to anybody that's waiting is don't wait. I mean, it accumulates with interest. The longer you wait, the bigger it gets. I mean, it's like a big ugly cancer growing in you, so.
I thought time heals, all right?
Not for me. I don't know, none of the vets that I know. What we did, and I say we, because every non-vet that I know that I've ever talked to that's willing to go there, you just numb out, don't mean nothing. That's what we'd say in country. When one of us would catch around, we'd yank his dog tags and maybe go back later. Just say it don't mean nothing, otherwise it wouldn't go back. So it is a necessity, it is a requirement to learn to numb out, or you won't do that behavior anymore. I mean, you're not an effective combat anymore if you don't learn to somehow disassociate. But when my first ND, they collectively, you guys had me looking back, and one of my biggest issues, and the biggest thing that kept me awake at night was survival guilt. And what that was about was leaving guys behind in a hot LZ. And they were never going to die or be tortured, or either way they were going to die. So my nightmares would be, this time I'm the one being left, and the VC are going to stake me out and start skinning me alive. And that had gone on for a good 30 years, at least once a week. And if I got really conscious enough, I would get up and grab my 45 and go sleep in a closet and wait for them to come. Figured I had a chance. Not realistically, but in a semi-stupid state of sleep. So what you guys did at ND was to have me change the picture. And I don't know, interesting enough, looking back, is, yeah, why didn't I do it? I'd always look back as we were dusting off to the guys I was leaving behind, and they're getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And I never looked inside the helo of the guys we were dusting off, the wounded. Both pictures are true, I just never thought to look there. So while I'm back into that, I'm feeling those feelings. I think you guys had me look at, what about the guys that are alive now, because you dusted off with them, you can't save them all. So, and I never thought about that. It's like, okay, you know, I don't recall whether they all made it or not. Some of them were pretty bad. So once I changed that picture and I went home with that picture, and both are true. It wasn't like it was an imaginary picture, but it was interesting enough, something I'd never looked at. And And so, all it took was a turn of the head and I could see them in there. I mean, some of them were screaming for their mothers. And some of them, the morphine was actually working on a little bit. And he gave me two pictures to look at then, the one that I lived with for 30 years and the one that was always there and I failed to look at or recognize was there. So it really changed my life. I got a real good night's sleep that night, and I didn't have a nightmare, and I thought, well, I'm churning up all this stuff, and I'm gonna have another rock and roll evening. And again, I had the drug of Klonopin to help me through it, but it was a real shallow life. I mean, I'm not a fan of mood-altering drugs. I understand the necessity, but it sure cuts a swath across the happiness and the highs and the lows. So, and life got better from there. I ended up, before long, I ended up cutting those Klonopin in half, and through a few more NDs, I ended up stopping taking it completely. And my relationships got better. My relationship with my sons got better. The people at work got better. Things started clearing up for me a little bit. It's like, okay, it's a choice to be in survival mode. It's a choice to do mood-altering drugs. It's a choice to have stinking thinking. I can make a change. It doesn't change what happened, but I can change my perception of it. So it was really, and it's a cliche, and I know people hear that as a cliche, but it was literally a life-altering experience for me that weekend. In one weekend, I had changed a perception, I guess, or a stinking belief system to one that was a little more productive. I mean, it was just a matter of a paradigm shift. Interesting. And I'd minored in psychology, so I knew a lot of this stuff intellectually. I'd read a lot of stuff. I watched videos, read books, went to a lot of counselors. I don't really feel a lot of them understood where I was at, but again, there were no vets during that ND that I recall. Or at least none that touched bases with me as a vet. So, I don't know as it's necessarily a requirement to have a vet here during that because you guys changed my life, but I would agree with Richard that it is a little easier if you can at least initially connect with somebody who's been there and done that. And you know what, I look back, pain is pain, trauma is trauma. A lot of people have PTSD and probably don't even know it. So I would encourage anybody to come here and do what they need to do to get in touch with that. It, like I said, it changed my life. It's changed, I keep coming back and people will say, well, why would you need to go back? Well, it isn't a one quick fix for one. It's a process. And I'm one of those rote learning kind of people. I don't get it the first time. I'm a male, blonde-headed male or gray-haired now. So I don't get it right away. I need that constant, okay, all right, how does that feel? Okay, I'm going to get in touch with the feeling. Okay, all right. So for me, I have to feel the feeling, then think about the feeling, then move it up front and articulate it. So it takes me a moment. If somebody says, how do you feel right now? But it's a whole lot better than feeling feelings, it beats being numb. It really does. I mean, I had relegated myself to thinking, all right, I'm going to be numb and I'll survive and I'll get through it. That's the way it goes. And so it was really a life changer for me, and I can't thank everybody that was a participant enough for being there and being willing to be vulnerable and to be non-judgmental and to actually go there in a deep hole with me, that pain, that shame and guilt. And so after that, I was able to peel that onion layer off and get into some really dark stuff that I've done. In Vietnam, where I wasn't the survivor and a victim, I was the actual perpetrator. So I'm still working on some of that. It sure makes life a lot easier. I mean, the colors are brighter, the sounds are crisper, and the food tastes better. It's just it's a wonderful thing.
That's the opposite of being numb. Because numb seems like that would be good.
Well, you know, it was overseas again, and I believe that numb serves a purpose, because if somebody would have said, I need you to get in touch with what you're feeling, I'm feeling so much fear that I don't want to go back, so if you're telling me we're gonna go do another mission, I'm out. And at one point in my early career, I was doing body recovery, and I was just nauseous every day. That's when I laugh and I tell people banana's the only thing you can eat that tastes the same coming back as it does going down. So I'd eat bananas and drink water and then lose them. And I mean, I saw stuff that I hope no one ever has to see, and I'm sure ambulance drivers and people that do those kind of jobs see it every day. So to get out of that, I signed up for special ops, and that's how I got out of body recovery and ended up in a place where I was really doing some carnage. But again, you know, MDs helped me deal with that. Always asked me to leave that 21-year-old over there, become the a little more passionate and compassionate old man that I've become now. So that's working for me. You know, I'd recommend that anybody that has that kind of pain, or that can relate to this story, or has somebody that can relate to this story, to come and give us a try. And, you know, it's one weekend out of your life. You won't miss it. If it, you know, I guarantee it'll change your life. And I recommend that you keep coming back. Like I say, I'm one of those rote learners, so I need to keep coming back, experience it, feel it, see where maybe my story or my insight might help somebody, and they're getting it. You know, sometimes, you know, looking back, I had a whole toolbox full of tools. I learned a whole bunch of stuff from a whole bunch of people, but I didn't apply it. It worked good for my friends, and you know, it's like most advice. I had to literally feel it to heal it. And so for me to get out of my head and get into the feeling side, you know, a real logical kind of guy. I'm a black and white kind of a person. So to get into the softer grays and to see the colors, it took the feelings. So again, here, like Richard said, we don't just talk about it, get it stirred up. We actually get into the feelings and do some processing. And I've never experienced that in a shrink's office or a chaplain or a VA rap session. So I would, like I say, I'd leave there angrier than I went in, because I'd hear the stories again and I'd relate to guys again. And now it's not just stuffed in the back of my head, it's up front and personal. And God, I'd leave there churned. I'd leave there almost in a rage. It's, you know, now I want to lock and load again, and obviously that doesn't work well in the civilian world. So
How'd you like the term emotional boot camp?
well, yeah, that's what I like to call ND, and I get that that's not for everybody, but emotional boot camp, and I call it, because in boot camp they broke you down, and you came back with a group of guys in that case, and so your individuality went out, and you came back as a team, and you would be with that team for the most part, your tour of duty. And you know, and you guys did the same thing. It's like somebody having your back means a lot too. And I did some missions solo, and they were just about carnage, but I knew there was a team to come back to. You know, we had agreements, and we had an arrangement about coming back, and if we didn't come back whole, what we would do about it. And there's some, I don't know, security, I guess, some comfort in that certainty and that solidarity that I don't know a lot of civilians get. So, you know, it won't cure you in a weekend, but it will certainly open your eyes. You'll see the tools that you can use to, you know, keep coming back. I mean, there's a support system, there's a lifeline you can call. You know, I've done it, people have done it with me, and realized that, hey, there's a way through this. You don't have to stay back there. You don't have to stay in pain. Pain's a real good teacher. I get that. it just sucks as a lifestyle.
So the boot camp was helpful for you, military boot camp was helpful, you feel, when you first went in?
You know, I'll admit right out of the gate, I hated it.
Yeah, I was gonna say, not much fun, but helpful still.
Yeah, and the difference is I didn't understand the concept. Here, it's about, for me, it was pain relief and a newfound freedom from stinking thinking. I really had that. Boy, this is it. I'm stuck. I don't know what else to do. This is what happened to me. I'm a victim. I can't change what went on. And really, I can't change the facts of what happened, but I can definitely change my belief system. And so now I realize that I'm not stuck. I don't have to use that picture constantly. I can use another picture, and even a made-up picture beats the pictures that I have. So, and my life's a lot happier after doing that. I mean, life is a lot better, more pleasant to be around. And so, yeah, here, it's a weekend version of what I call a boot camp, but it's emotional. It's an option. I mean, yeah, I guess you could check out nowadays. I don't know, in my day you were checking out. There's a lot of helpful people. You don't have one DI chewing your ass. You've got a bunch of people with empathy and I'm sure some with sympathy and a lot of compassion. And it's really great if somebody can relate, whether it's trauma or drama or fear or hurt or anger. I mean, everybody, I remember catching hepatitis and turning as yellow as the people I used to hunt. And if somebody would have said to me, boy, you know what, this is the way your life's going to be, I'll own it. I'd have checked out. There is no way. I only had that experience one other time under canopy, and I was so sick that I thought, well, if I don't get shot, I was miserable. And I was a long ways up there, and I thought, if I'm going to be this sick for very much longer, I'm just going to cut it loose. I just retarded thinking. Glad I didn't do it. It was pain avoidance. So, for those who spend a life avoiding pain, I'd highly recommend this.
Did you have thoughts in that direction after, during the 20 years you've been trying to heal since now?
Not really. Looking back, I spent a lot of time inflicting pain on other people, not so much myself. So I guess that was my way out. I'd start fights that didn't be started, look for reasons to be angry, and yeah, anger is a useful emotion if you use it right. But the way I was abusing anger, so I was abusing Klonopin. When I was overseas, I really abused alcohol. And I made it okay. I made a lot of things okay. So I've been working on making amends and changing my life so that I could be a little more congruent with what I believe and what I feel is what I'm doing. And that's important to me now, more so. And I've always pretty much been proud of myself. I've never asked anybody to do something I wasn't willing to do or haven't done. So if I'm asking you to step up and take a look at some of your fears, it's because I've done it. I'll be here for you if you decide to do it. And I'll share the stories and go to the well with you. I'll go through the pain with you. So,
Because now you help other guys, right?
as much as I can, guys that are willing to do it. I can relate. I can relate to what it's like to be in that hole and that fear and pain and depression, and I can really relate to what's it like on the other side. And I don't think a lot of guys can peek over that hole that they've dug to see that there's a hope. You guys really gave me hope. That first MD was like, wow, this can change. It's just a matter of switching a picture. That simple. It's that complicated, but that simple. It's just. But I really, literally had to feel it to heal it. I'd done all that writing out and journaling and stuff like that. I'm not saying there's not a purpose for that, and it's not a good thing, but it didn't help me as much. I had to feel it, smell it, taste it. I really had to go back there to get in touch with that in order, and while I was there, that's when we switched the picture. It was like, wow, okay. I mean, that was big and powerful for me. Reading about it, talking about it, journaling about it, it's never helped me. I mean, and I'm not discouraging anybody who does that, but it sure didn't help me doing it that way. I needed to actually go to that pain and that feeling and that, you know, that fear. It's a lot of fear. You can be dysfunctionally comfortable in your dysfunction. And I spent a lot of years doing that. I didn't know what I didn't know, and at least emotionally.
So doing those tasks like journaling and, trying to heal, that kind of stuff, can be useful if you do the emotional work first or during or after?
I would say if you had an idea what you wanted to work on when you came here, I mean, most of us do, I guess, because it's painful. I did journaling back in the day, probably 20, 30 years ago. I'd used the opposite hand and all the things, It probably helped, but it sure didn't diminish the nightmares, it didn't diminish the pain, it didn't diminish, some of the things that I did that I still had survival guilt when I got through all of it. And I took a lot of classes where I got my degree to figure out where I was at. That was part of my incentive program to, what I'm doing isn't working, so let's do something else, but I wasn't sure what to do. And so the few things that I did try didn't really, do much for me either. Like I say, I left the VA angrier than I went there, and I went week after week after week, thinking something's going to change. This is where the other guys are coming. I'll go where the herd's going. A lot of us would leave the VA and go to a bar. Got to numb out. I've cheered up feelings now I wished I didn't have. Finally, it's like, okay, let me see. Pain equals talking to the VA. I just don't know. It was a lot easier on me. Okay, what's some of the hard questions there?
Well, in teaching ND about being real and open and honest, and I feel like you've been doing that, is that, do you feel like we also teach that probably not a good idea to do that with everyone? Do you agree?
Absolutely, especially old worn-out combat vets. There are things, and Richard talked about it, I'm not going to tell the average civilian population, I'm just not going to go there. They either don't know how or they're not willing to go to non-judgmental. And I can spot them in a heartbeat, the eyebrow or the oh my God, I'm not interested in sharing stories with people like that. I don't trust them. So yeah, there are people in this world, in this society that, I don't know, to be a cliche, Jack Nicholson said in his movie, you can't handle the truth. And some people don't want to know it, and that's okay, but everybody that I encountered in ND at any time was willing to listen. I didn't feel judged, I didn't feel, I'd say 90% of it was compassion. Some of them couldn't relate, or some of them were, a bit overwhelmed, but nobody had judgments that, because everybody's felt every emotion I've ever felt. I mean, to whatever degree. I mean, I think the one big camaraderie thing I have for ND is that everyone here's felt what I felt to some degree. I mean, maybe not the trauma or the drama or the
Details.
pardon me?
The details, the story.
Yeah, the details. Yeah, but we've all felt pain, betrayal, fear, hope, love. I mean, we've all felt those things. So to connect, and a lot of times, and I think it's mostly men, and I won't try to be stereotypical about it, I think we think we're the only ones ever felt that way. We're the only ones thought that way. And to hear other people go, yeah, I felt that way, or yeah, I thought that. It's like, wow, really? And it's kind of freeing because, wow, we really are all connected on this planet. And, you know, if you're experiencing pain and I'm aware of it, then I can share in that pain and maybe diminish yours somewhat, or maybe just go there and say, wow, you know what? I know what you feel. I can't change the situation perhaps, but I can